So the purpose of today's practice, so yesterday was actually Medicine Buddha Day, so I hope you all got to do some Medicine Buddha mantras yesterday. So this was sort of the closest we could get. And so the purpose of today's gathering is really for us to gather and do the practice together. So who here was at Trungpa Rinpoche's empowerment? Yeah, okay, great. So it's always wonderful to get a sort of refresher from the master. And you know, one of the reasons that it's really important to do Medicine Buddha practice in this particular time is that Medicine Buddha is really a great practice for pretty much everything that's happening. So in order to increase your compassion, it's really helpful. In order to deal with other people's illnesses, if you're in the healing profession, it sort of helps prevent sort of the compassion fatigue that may come from really serving many other people. So there's a lot of different reasons that we can do the Medicine Buddha practice. We can also do the Medicine Buddha practice as the Guru Yoga, as like your main practice, connecting you back to your teachers. And the Medicine Buddha practice, it's said that if you just hear the name Vidurya, which is always mistranslated as lapis, so it's not lapis, it's actually star sapphire, when just by hearing his name of the Medicine Buddha, and there's 8 of them, but by hearing the name of the Medicine Buddha, that you will not fall into the lower realms, that you will automatically be sort of saved from the lower realms, and there's great help in liberation just by hearing the name of the Medicine Buddha. So the Medicine Buddha's sort of realm and is here. Here's his mandala, and the Medicine Buddha's realm is actually farthest of all of them. So even farther away than Amitabha's realm. And so the Medicine Buddha has everything you need within his realm. So in the mandala you can see that we have all of these sort of really cooling medicines and very heating medicines, and we have the Aurora forest, the Marrowband, which is what he holds in his right hand, symbolizing relative truth, healing on a physical level, healing the physical form, the emotional form, the body level, this sort of bag of bones that we walk around in. And then on the ultimate level, the healing is of healing the 3 root poisons, so our attachment, our aggression, and our sort of laziness. So our ignorance, our basic ignorance, which gives rise to all 3 of those root humors. So here on the other side we have, you know, the 5 types of calcite, we have healing hot springs waters, and all the various aspects. And the one other thing that I really like to point out about this particular mandala is that when the Medicine Buddha gave his teachings, he gave the teachings as an emanation. Even though he was requested by Manjushri to give these teachings, nobody really wanted to ask the Medicine Buddha anything. And so out of his great compassion for the suffering of other beings, he self-emanated. So there was a speech aspect of himself and a mind aspect of himself which emanates. And so when you're doing the practice, and if you really get into the practice after many years, you can become really more familiar with those 2 speech and mind aspects emanating. And then throughout the whole medical text, if some of you are more interested in the medical side, that's our entire basis of our text, is a question and answer format of the Medicine Buddha emanating himself. How do you heal all sickness? And so this is sort of the speech aspect is asking this question, and then the mental aspect is actually answering, well, you heal all illness by looking at the root causes of ignorance. So, and then from there it goes. And then there's 4 complete tantras that are seriously every chapter, oh, great sage, please, how do you heal toenail fungus? I mean, it doesn't get that specific, but sometimes it does. And so, you know, it's a question and answer. And so that emanation aspect of himself was born of a deep desire to be generous. And so the Medicine Buddha is surrounded by 4 different groups. The Medicine Buddha is surrounded by gods sages, bodhisattvas, and Buddhists and non-Buddhists. So I always say that that too is very important, because you don't have to be Buddhist to do this practice, and you don't have to worry, if you're in the healing profession, about using this mantra for other beings, who are not Buddhist. If you're in the healing profession, I've certainly used the Medicine Buddha practice on patients that are very devoutly Jewish, and it's been very effective, and it doesn't interfere with them at all. So the Medicine Buddha gave his teachings as this emanation through his speech aspect and his mind aspect, so an emanation of literally in the hearts, and I don't have a picture of it, but I do at home, of these two having this conversation. And literally, even though these four groups of people were surrounding the Medicine Buddha, then everyone could understand what he was saying through the power of the lineage, through the power of what we call in Tibetan the gyu. Everyone was able to actually understand what was being said, and that's a very important point too, because understanding compassion transcends language. So this brings me back to the point, if you've been in my teachings before about Medicine Buddha, that it's really about your personal connection to the Medicine Buddha and developing that. Don't worry about all the bells and the whistles of imagining certain things and sort of building this whole mandala. If you've been doing this practice for many, many years, this mandala is quite easy to sort of conjure up and see, and you can see all the gates, and you can see the four kings, and you can see all the plants, and it becomes quite easy. But I can tell you that 20 years ago, when I first started to do this practice, that just imagining a blue being in front of me was difficult. So if you're early on in the practice, just really begin there. Begin with the connection of conjuring up that compassion and the connection through the lineage, through the transmission, to this greater Buddha nature, which automatically exists within each of you, within each of all of us. We have an enlightened clarity. We get lost and we get confused from it, and we get separated, but it's actually never really separate from us. It's always there. And so by holding on to the connection to the guru and through the lineage, that awakens. So if you've ever been around some sort of pretty stellar beings, there's something that happens when you're in the room or you're sitting with your master or your guru, where there's a part of you that is probably your worst demon, whether it's passion, aggression, or ignorance. Those start to fall away. So I always talk about the 3 root poisons, and I say it's really important to get to know who's your favorite poison. What poison do you tend to go for the most? Do you tend to stick your head in the sand and ignore things and hope they go away? Do you tend to sort of fight it every way you can and criticize it, either yourself or in others, and be aggressive? Or do you tend to just get really attached? No, I'm going to have this. No, that'll be good. This'll do. That'll work. No, this. And do we get distracted in that detachment? So get familiar with your favorite poisons. Really know them very intimately, because that's the main thing that's covering up your Buddha nature. And so by just recognizing that, everyone wants to do the really fancy practices, but really what it comes down to is knowing who you are and what's covering you up. And so the Medicine Buddha is a great practice for helping you to uncover that by just really connecting to the lineage, because when you do that, when you're in the presence of a great being, part of you relaxes. So the part of you that is either sticking your head in the sand kind of pokes out and takes a little look, or for my case, my favorite root poison is always aggression and anger. So when I am in the presence of Trungpa Rinpoche, who is my master, I notice I am like the softest, most nice, gentle being ever. It's really lovely. And I always used to think, like, can I just stay with him forever? But it's not that he makes me that way, it's that he's reminding me that I am actually that way, that I can actually let go of my poison. So the Medicine Buddha practice can do that for you too. And so really focus in on your practices of developing the relationship between the generation. So we call this generation stage, when we're actually sort of, I guess you could say imagining. Imagining is not the best word, but we're actually allowing from emptiness to have this being come. We're inviting him from his far away eastern realm. We're inviting him here. We're inviting all his retinue, all the 16 bodhisattvas. We're inviting the 4 kings. We're inviting everyone to come and be with us in this room. We're building the mandala. But if it gets too much to build the mandala, and especially if you're more of a lung or a windy-natured mind, a very fast, speedy, sharp mind, it's not a good idea to try and build too much. It's more important to narrow that down and really focus on your connection. Okay? So when you imagine that, you're really working on stabilizing that generation stage. You're really working on holding that very steady. So it's not just this imaginary sort of thing that we're making up in our minds. It's a very real, live, and tangible connection that we have with Sangye Mama. So the mantra itself, Te Ta Om Bekenze Bekenze Maha Bekenze Raja Samogati Soha, actually has very deep meaning. So what it literally means is like this, thus who's gone beyond, the king of physicians, the supreme physician, the one who heals all things, meaning on a relative and an ultimate level. So sometimes disease really manifests on a relative level, on a body level, on a mental, emotional level. And then the ultimate level, of course, is full enlightenment. So this is pointing to the fact that the Medicine Buddha can go beyond the ultimate level and achieve full, complete awakening, and that we too can do that. So the supreme physician, the Laji, literally means doer of God's work. And this literally means that on the ultimate level, realization can be had through this particular practice. It's not just this basic sadhana that we use for healing. It's actually a very profound, full practice. Okay? And then if that becomes stable, then we really work on the Om, the Ah, and the Hum. So the radiating from the 3 centers of the Medicine Buddha, the light coming and radiating into ourselves. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through sections of these, and then we're going to stop, and then we're going to talk about what they mean in English. Okay? So Trungpa Rinpoche prefers everything to be in Tibetan because he said there's less beings who have become enlightened speaking English in English bodies thus far. So maybe one day, not me, that's for sure. And so therefore, there's more power in the Tibetan. So we'll just begin by going through the practice. Alright, so your guys' text, page 2. So when you do this practice, you can either have like a card of the Medicine Buddha like this, which you're welcome to have, as long as you just know that images of the Buddha or things with mantras on them are considered super sacred, so we don't put them on the floor, we don't step over them, we don't put them under our seat, these kinds of things. So if you don't have a card, you're welcome to take one today. So you can either make a full offering and have a mandala, or you can have like a little statue of the Medicine Buddha like this. This is my son's Medicine Buddha. We have one for everyone in the family, and his is the nice travel size. So you can set this up in front of you, and you can also make full offerings. And then the first thing that we do is we go for refuge. So let's begin with that. Namo Kunchuk Sundang Sawe Sum Kapni Namla Kapsu Chi Jokun Sangi Ladu Chi Jamchub Choktu Senki Do Kunchuk Sumdang Sawe Sum Kapne Nama Kapsu Chi Jokun Sangi Lagu Chi Jamchub Choktu Senki Do Kongchuk Sumdang Sawa Sum Kapne Nama Kapsu Chi Jokun Sangi Lagu Chi Jangchub Choktu Semki Do. So we're going for refuge to the source of the refuge. The source of refuge is the three jewels. The Buddha, who sort of showed that there was a way out. Yeah? And we have a Sangha with us, and we have the teachings, which are kind of our guide, our map. So we recite that 3 times, sort of to give us a good strong base. And then from there, we begin to invite the mandala in, okay? So, Kadak Longmi Chupa Yi Namse Gangwei Chupe Jen